What's good, everybody? It's your boy Kirk Ray Smith. Y'all know what it is. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about trauma echoes. Trauma echoes, or echoes of trauma. And so, for those of you who are familiar with or work in the arena around mental health, you'll probably more than likely kind of be familiar with the term trauma echoes or echoes of trauma. And actually, in one of my books, I talked about it, trauma echoes from the past, particularly for African Americans here in our country. But at any rate, so a trauma echo, to put it, to make it as simple as I can, is basically when you have these traumatic events that happen in your life in the past, but still kind of cause you problems today. Haunting can haunt you, spook you, give you anxiety from something that a traumatic experience that may have taken place in your past, and it still sort of echoes even now and bothers you. When I was a kid, our house was broken into several times. It was pretty common in my community to have these break-ins and people, while folks are there in the middle of the night, they'll come in and steal and do whatever. And it got to the point where, you just kind of, any sound that you heard in the house, you thought it was somebody breaking in. And it's traumatizing as a kid. It would be for anybody, for that matter. But at any rate, every time I would hear a sound, I would always think somebody's in the house, and so it traumatized me. And for a while, until I eventually left for the military, but I would struggle with that, even though no one was in the house, and it wasn't like someone broke in the house all the time. But again, I was traumatized by what took place. It also happens, for example, on jobs. And so a person had a bad experience in their previous place of employment, and say their supervisor or boss betrayed them, or a coworker or whatever. And so they get to the next job and they have trust issues. They're concerned about, well, how are these people going to treat me? Are they going to do me the same way? Again, that's an echo of trauma. That's a trauma echo. It sort of spooks you, and you still struggle with that. So it impacts your ability to do your job, or at least do your job without distraction, because you're distracted by what happened in the past. So therefore, you don't give these new people a chance because you think they're going to be just like everybody else. Same is the case in relationships. Those are trauma echoes. Now, those are not severe examples. There are more severe examples. If someone was sexually abused as a child, that can definitely cause trauma echoes over the years in many, many ways. Multiple levels of concern and anxiety can exist as a result of that. Sometimes trauma from the past can cause you to be bitter. It can cause you to be angry. It can cause you to lash out, act out, and do different things from what happened. Now, sometimes, again, I believe that things happen to us, and we do things to ourselves. I mean, it kind of both happens, right? Things happen to us, and whether we brought it on ourselves or it was brought on by someone else, it still has an impact on us nonetheless. And so those things, again, can bother you. Now, I also believe, and this may be a little bit more nuanced, that trauma echoes can have an impact generationally. So there are certain trauma, or a certain amount of trauma that may have happened in your family that could be passed down. And you could still be haunted by things you never really experienced, but you've been around because it exists within your family, or in some cases, culture. And so there's things, for example, if somebody else had a trauma echo, for example, let's say, okay, a parent, and a parent, say, they may have had a bad experience, let's say with a dog. So they were bitten by a dog at age 11, and for their entire life, they had this huge fear of dogs because they thought every dog would try to bite them like the one that bit them at 11. So then they have children and they teach the kids stay away from dogs, because dogs are mean, they're evil, they'll bite you and they'll kill you. So now that child is being taught something that they never really experienced, but because their parent went through it, they're being exposed to that. Now, all dogs obviously don't want to bite you and kill you, but what I'm saying is that now, as a child, if you're teaching me this, then I'm going to believe it. And I'm going to live by that. So now I'm being impacted by your trauma echo that's actually been passed down to me. So although I've never had that trauma, I'm now operating as if I did, because again, you've given me that trauma, or you, your experience with trauma has caused you to teach me something, although probably not the right thing, but you taught it to me nonetheless. So I'm gonna live that out, and I'm gonna pass it on and on and on. And that's kind of one of the challenges and the scary things about trauma echoes, is because is that they can be passed down, and almost inadvertently, unintentionally. You're not trying to, but it exists. And here's why I'm making this video, this short video about it. It's a huge issue, and I think we all need to stop. And before we judge people about their anxiety or things that bother them or cause them worry, fear, or concern, don't put them down as if they're some horrible person, or they have some lack of faith, or their lack of confidence, or whatever it is, because it's not fair. We're all different and unique. We do not go through the same things, and even if we experience the same things or similar things, we don't respond the same way. We're not made up the same. So our idiosyncrasies, proclivities, habits, bad habits, whatever, good habits, whatever, we aren't the same. We're not a monolithic society. We're different, and so you have to respect that. And a trauma echo is a real thing, and it doesn't really matter who you are. You can be impacted by some kind of trauma echo. Again, these are things that may or may not have happened to you in the past that's really influencing you now, and you hear it. They go bump in the night for you still. And there's things in my life that still go bump in the night for me. There's things that I still have fears of, that I think is happening, that may not be happening, but I sometimes in my mind I think it is, because of what I went through before. And so you got to understand, this shapes our behavior. This shapes how we see the world, how we deal with situations and adversity, because it's based on the trauma from the past. PTSD is probably one of the most profound examples of trauma echoes, because it's things that had already that have happened in the past, but they still live on in our minds. So it has an impact on our psyche, and it's hard for people who haven't experienced what we've experienced, or that trauma, or whatever it is, to fully understand what that means. And so we have to be very, very careful. We don't have to be psychologists or clinicians, but you have to leave room for understanding as to why people react the way that they do. Why do they do what they do in the first place? Why do they say what they say? Sometimes, people who have trauma echoes, and heavy, sometimes they try to mask what they're struggling with in other ways, and so they may act out. Some people think somehow if they're pretty enough, the echoes will go away. If they're handsome enough, the echoes will go away. If they have enough money, the echoes will go away. If they accumulate enough stuff, the echoes will go away. But the reality is that trauma echoes just don't disappear like that. And so what we have to learn how to do is, number one, have people around you that you can trust and you can talk to about it. You had to pay thousands of dollars for counseling. I'm not saying that counseling isn't effective, but just have people in your circle that you can trust that'll just listen to you, but just learn how to manage it. Understand what it is, and instead of trying to fight the trauma echo, try to manage the echo, and don't let the echo control every aspect of your life, because the reality is most of what we think in our minds, most of what we imagine, or most of what we're afraid of isn't really real. The way we feel is real, but a lot of times we're afraid of things that really don't exist. And so you have to figure out how you're going to live through that. So I just wanted to put that out real quick, like to keep these videos under 10 minutes. But, again, trauma echoes, do some research on it. It's a serious thing, and it's something that we all deal with at some time or another, some point or another in our lives. So appreciate everybody. Share the video. I think it's good dialogue. 1.